Hi, my name is Bob Watson. I'm a Chief Range Officer here at the Foothills Public Shooting Complex in Cleveland, North Carolina. We are at the training center right now. I have a background in military. I was a firefighter, paramedic, and I'm a NRA certified instructor along with a Chief Range Officer with the NRA and a North Carolina concealed carry instructor. So let's get started. First of all, we want to talk to the parents. We want to inform parents of the measures that we're going to do to keep your child safe while they're at camp this summer. We're going to talk about some of the activities, the schedules, some of the known risks, the required forms they need to get signed up, and introduce some of the parents to the program and staff provider. The courses that will be taught during the camp will be boating safety, hunter safety, archery, and firearm safety. Boating safety, we use North Carolina Wildlife's Boat Smart course. It is taught by a certified North Carolina Wildlife instructor, and it's everything you need to pass the North Carolina boating safety test and be able to boat with confidence. In our hunter education, we also follow the North Carolina Wildlife Resource Commission's program for hunter safety. It's a safety course. It includes ethics, responsibility, conservation, and wildlife management, along with some survival and first aid tips, so in case you get lost in the woods or get injured in the woods. There's no minimum age to take this class. And because of hunter safety, hunting accidents have been reduced over 50% in the past few years. And it is accepted in all 50 states in North America. You're going to talk about this, or you've got one. The next area that we're going to talk about is shotguns. The safety rules for shotguns, which is similar to all firearms and even archery. You must wear the proper eye and ear protection when shooting out on the field with your group. Understand how the firearm operates and how to handle it. You don't want to come out on the range with a brand new firearm that's in the box and you've never seen before, and you don't even know how to load it, how to make it safe, what to do with it. Never, ever use alcohol or drugs during, before, or while shooting or after shooting. Use the correct ammunition, which is a very important thing in your firearm, because there are some gauges and calibers of ammunition that will fit into a different firearm of a different caliber, and you could have a catastrophic failure if you use the wrong ammunition. And for instance, all 20 gauge shells are yellow, but they will fit in a 12 gauge shotgun, and you would be able to load a 12 gauge right behind it. So if you loaded by accident a 20 gauge and then loaded a 12 gauge and discharged it, it would be a catastrophic failure. Do not attempt to catch a fallen firearm. If it's fallen, just let it hit the ground. It's safer than you trying to catch it, because it may accidentally discharge and you have a hand or a face or something in front of it. And you should always follow the range rules. The three basic never violate rules is to always keep the muzzle pointed in a safe direction, which means away from any person or anything that you do not intend to shoot. Always keep your finger off the trigger until you're ready to shoot, because if you have your finger on the trigger and you're doing something with the firearm, it could accidentally discharge on you. Always keep the firearm unloaded until it's ready to use. Never load a firearm until you're instructed to do so on the range, or if you're hunting, you should never load the firearm until you get to where you're going and you're ready to shoot. And if you remember one of these rules, if you always keep the muzzle pointed in a safe direction, then if you mess up on some of the others, the consequences are not quite as great, because if that muzzle is pointed in a safe direction and you accidentally discharge it, it's at least going to discharge into an area where it's safe. So remember that one. Know your target and what's beyond it. Many hunting accidents have happened because someone saw something move in the bushes and they thought it was a deer and they shot it, and it was actually their fellow hunting partner. So you need to know what is beyond your target and what you're going to shoot for sure. Identify the target. Do not rely on the firearm safety. The safety on firearms is a mechanical device, and it could always fail because it's a mechanical device. It is absolutely not 100% safe. So never rely on the safety. Confirm that the gun is safe to operate. Before you start using the firearm, you should inspect the firearm to make sure that it's safe, that all the parts are there, that it's functioning, that there's nothing obstructing the barrel. You want a safe operating firearm. Okay, we're going to talk about eye dominance, and that means do you see better with your right eye or do you see better with your left eye? So what I want you to do is take your hands, put them together, and make just a small triangle. And then keep both eyes open. Take that small triangle and put it over an object at a distance, such as I'm focusing on a picture on the back wall. Keeping both eyes open, start to pull your hands towards your face. Now, be sure to keep the object that you're focusing on in the middle of the diamond. And see where I landed? My triangle landed over my right eye. So I'm right eye dominant. Thankfully, I shoot right-handed. If I had pulled it back and it had landed on my left eye, then I would be left eye dominant. But if I'm still right-handed and left eye dominant, then I'm what they call cross-eye dominant. So I'll have to make some adjustments in order to shoot if I'm cross-eye dominant. So you need to know if you're left eye dominant, right eye dominant, and whether you shoot left or right. And if you're cross-eye dominant, you may want to try to learn to shoot with the other side. So if I was cross-eyed, if I was left eye dominant, right-handed, I may want to try to learn how to shoot left-handed, so that way my eye and my side would be lined up. The stance for our shooting position, which I need to come around here. If you're right-handed, you want to put your right foot or your dominant foot, whichever it is, right or left, put it back just a little bit, okay? Then you want to put your other foot forward, bend at the knees, bend at the waist, and come up like this. You'll be something similar to this, okay? You want to put most of your weight on your front foot, which would be your weak side or your non-dominant side. Your dominant side, you want it at the back. You want to point your toes to where you're going to shoot, because you'll be sort of a spring, a slinky, where you got some tension on it. Bend forward with your legs a little bit, bend at the waist, and then you bring the shotgun up to your cheek. You don't take your head down, you bring it up. And then you go back, and if you're shooting skeet, you'll be following that skeet, and as you come to this position is when you want to shoot, and then you continue to follow through, okay? I'm going to get one of the shotguns. You'll notice I have a chamber flag in the shotgun, so I'll know that there's nothing in there, that it's safe. I'm going to check the chamber. If there's nothing in it, I'm going to check my safety. The safety is on. So let's say we're going to be shooting in that direction. So we've got our shotgun. We're going to grip it with our weak hand here on the forearm and keep our index finger pointed in the direction that we want to shoot, okay? And like I said, when you bring your shotgun up into position, you don't want to duck your head. You want to bring the shotgun up to your cheek. You want to take your arm, kind of have it out, and make a pocket for the butt of the gun to come up in. And you want to keep it high up in your shoulder. So again, we're going to come up to our face, lay our cheek on it, keep our finger pointed down, and then we're ready to shoot. We'd get the skeet, we'd follow it through, shoot it about here, and then continue to follow it through. Okay? We'll put the chamber flag back in it, make sure it's safe. Okay. Acquiring the target, your focal point in shotgun, you don't aim a shotgun like you do a rifle. You sort of point a shotgun. So your focal point is the position of the target where it comes into focus. And the targets are broken in this zone, which is known as the break zone. And break points or break zones can vary from person to person depending on how you stand, which station you're shooting, and just your normal way you shoot a shotgun. You point with a shotgun at the moving target, you don't aim at it, and you want to keep both eyes open when you're using a shotgun, whether you're shooting clays or whether you're shooting birds, because when you come up to shoot, you want to be able to see your target coming into your range and into your focus, and then you'll pick it up with your dominant eye. I know rifle shooters, it's hard to do that because you've been taught to close one eye, but you want to keep both eyes open so your peripheral can pick your target up. And follow through. That is so, so important when shooters are shooting skeet or even shooting bird. And when I talk about follow through, again, I'm keeping my firearm pointed in the safe direction. This wall is safe. There's nothing on the other side that if I accidentally discharge would harm anything. So we get ready, we're going to shoot, we come up, both eyes are open, we come back, we pick up our bird or our clay, and as we shoot it, bang, we continue to follow the pieces of the bird or the clay as it moves forward, just like golfing. Golfing has follow through. When they hit the ball, they don't stop swinging the club. They continue to follow through, and that's what we're going to do, because if you stop, you're going to be behind the bird or the clay. So you want to continue to follow through and follow those pieces or that bird. Shotgun storage. When not in use, firearms should always be locked and stored so that they are not accessible to children or other individuals who should not have access. And that means if a stranger comes into your house or you invite a stranger into your house, you do not want them to be able to have access to your firearm. You should store your firearm in a different place than you store your ammunition. Never store your firearm loaded. There are various types of locks, gun safes for long guns. While they may function in different ways, they basically all prevent the firearm from being discharged. Okay, let's talk about some of the common shotgun types. We're going to talk about a break open or an over and under. I have an example of a break over, which this is commonly referred to as a double barrel. If it was over and under, then these barrels would be stacked this way when we're holding it in this position. But basically you have a lever, you push it, the firearm breaks open, the shells discharge, you put 2 more shells in there, okay? And if you'll notice, we have the butt of the firearm, the stock of the firearm, the trigger guard, and the trigger guard is here to help with accidental discharge, like if you hit something against this trigger guard, if it wasn't there, you'd be hitting the triggers and it would be discharging the firearm. Here's the trigger, and on this particular model, since it's a double barrel, it actually has 2 triggers. Sometimes you just have 1 trigger, okay? But still, that's the trigger. The action, which is in this area, this is the part that when you pull the trigger, all the mechanisms that are inside here causes the firing pin to strike the shell and causes the explosion. Your barrel, which is where your projectile goes down, and then your forearm, which is where you will be gripping the firearm when you're getting ready to shoot. And remember, very, very important, this is the muzzle, this end. This is the business end of a firearm. This is not where you want to be. This is the part of the firearm you always keep pointed in a safe direction. You know, don't ever forget that. This is the business end of the gun. Our semi-automatic shotgun, of course, has many of the same parts. The butt, the stock, the trigger guard. This one has a single trigger. It has a forearm. It has a barrel. But on this particular one, the action, again, is built into this area, but it has a chamber that you load the shell into, and underneath here, it has an area where you can load more shells. You can load 3 shells, or if you take the plug out, which may be illegal if you're hunting, you need to check that, you can load additional shells. So this one, when you shoot, the explosion will pull back, send the action back, that empty shell will eject, and it will load the next shell. So that's why it's called a semi-auto. You can shoot as fast as you can pull the trigger. On this one, you just have 2 shots and that's it on the double barrel or the breakover. But on the semi-automatic, you can shoot 3 shells, you can shoot 5 shells. Some of the competition guns have 14 shells that you can put in it, but every time you pull the trigger, you're going to cause the firearm to do its job, to go through its cycle, and to shoot cartridge. Okay. Our next type of shotgun is a pump shotgun. This is kind of a cross between the breakover and the semi-automatic. You can shoot more shells here if you load 3 shells or 5 shells or whatever the capacity is. You can continue, but the trick on this one is you have to cock it and then load it. So it's not automatic, it's manual. Again, it has the same parts, the stock, the butt, the trigger guard, the trigger, the forearm, the barrel, but the difference is every time you shoot, you have to cock it. And when you do this, it's ejecting the shell, and then it's loading the shell, getting ready to shoot again. Okay? And if you'll notice, I'm always putting chamber flags in them, so that way I'll know that they can't be discharged accidentally. Shotgun ammunition. Shotgun ammunition is done in gauges. So we start with the smallest number is the biggest gauge as far as the shell goes. The 12 gauge is bigger than a 20 gauge. A 20 gauge is bigger than a 28 gauge. So those are in gauges, and it has to do with the years and years ago with the weight, so many pellets that you could get into an ounce of shot. So 12 pellets would make an ounce of shot. It was a 12 gauge. 20 shots would make an ounce of shot, so that's a 20 gauge. Now, if you'll notice, there's one more caliber here, and it says a 410. The 410 is actually .410 diameter on the barrel. It's not done in gauges, but it is a tiny, tiny little shell. 410s are usually done for small game hunting, such as a rabbit or a squirrel or something. There are some people that's good enough to use a 410 to shoot skeet with. It's not me. Also note that, as we said earlier, all 20 gauge shot shells are yellow. What are some of the practical uses of shotgun? Of course, there's recreational, such as sporting clays or trap. There's competitions, such as some of the 3-gun competitions where they use a pistol, a rifle, and a shotgun. Of course, there's hunting, usually bird hunting, but you can get the right kind of shotgun and shell and hunt deer or bigger game. Personal protection, some people carry the smaller shotguns with a certain kind of shot in it for home defense. And collecting. There are some shotguns that bring a lot of money. So there's several things that you can use a shotgun for. We're going to talk a little bit about some of the recreational use, such as skeet shooting, and there's skeet competition, trap competition also. In skeet, there are 2 trap houses, and where my red pointer is, that's considered a trap house. That's where the machine is with the clays, and it will be throwing. So you have a high house on this side, and you have a low house on this side. So this one will start out low and come across. This one will start out high and come across. You have 8 shooting stations which are arranged in a semicircle. We start with number 1 here under the high house, and we work our way around until we get to number 7, which is at the low house. And then station number 8 is in between them, which you will shoot a high house, turn around, and then shoot a low house. A round of skeet consists of 25 birds. Now, trap is a little bit different. You've got one trap house or throwing station right in front of where you will be shooting. And it throws away from you, but it also oscillates. It'll vary between throwing left to the center, throwing over to the right. So the machine is actually moving back and forth, and it randomly throws a clay pigeon. It'll be going away from you, but it may be going to the left a little bit or to the right a little bit, anywhere in that about 45-degree field. There's 5 shooting positions. They start at 16 yards behind the trap house, and as you get into some of the competitions, they continue to move further and further back, but normally it starts at 16 yards. It also consists of 25 targets for a round of trap, and what you will do is you will start in position number 1, and let's say there's 5 of you, so everybody will start in a separate position. You'll shoot 5 clays, and then you'll move and rotate. So everyone gets an opportunity to shoot from each position, because see, position number 3 is directly behind the trap house, and that would be the optimal place that you would want to shoot. But in order to make it fair, we kind of move around and we rotate. But again, it'll be 25 targets for a round of trap. 5-stand is a modern version of sporting clays. Sporting clays have become popular. It's kind of a course that you follow. It's like golf with a shotgun is how it's sometimes described. You get to walk a course, and you'll come to a station and you shoot that station. Well, trap house is a modified version of that. As you can see down here in the picture, these are 5 stands in one location. So you stand there and you get to shoot. But it may be 6 to 8 different trap machines. They'll be throwing it different ways. They may be throwing them low, they may be throwing them high, maybe throwing away from you, maybe throwing one on the ground, several different things. So you get a variety of targets and directions to shoot, but unlike sporting clays, you get to stay in one place and you don't have to walk near as much. You can see the target presentations are angles, trajectory distances, vary from one machine to the next, and again, it consists of 25 rounds. And one of the reasons that you keep seeing the number 25, there's 25 shells in a box of shotguns. So it just kind of works out really well that way. Talked a little bit about sporting clays. It's known as golf with a shotgun. There's 2 trap machines at each station. They vary in the way they present them, and again, it may be left, right, high, low, throw one on the ground, just all kinds of different directions. The course typically consists of 12 stations, and sporting clays usually consist of 50 to 100 targets per round. So there's a lot more shooting in a round of sporting clays than there is in a 5-stand. Safety rules, again, always keep the muzzle pointed in a safe direction. Always keep your finger off the trigger until you're ready to shoot, and always keep the firearm unloaded until you're ready to use it. All right, let's talk about some rifles. Some of the uses of a rifle, of course, law enforcement is going to use rifles. Military are going to use rifles. A lot of people use rifles for personal protection, just like they do shotguns. Competition, there's a lot of competitions with rifles. I mentioned earlier 3-gun, which uses a pistol, a rifle, and a shotgun. They're here at Foothills. We have fallen steel competitions. We have steel challenge competitions. We have a Marine Corps shoot competition. So a lot of different competitions for rifles. There's a lot of precision, long distance competitions for rifles. Recreational target shooting, which is the person coming to the range, hanging a paper target and seeing how well they shoot the rifle at different distances, how close to the bullseye can they get. And then, of course, hunting. Hunting, rifles are used for hunting quite a bit, anywhere from a small game up to large animals such as elk, moose, things like that, and bear. Again, there's firearm safety rules with rifles, but they are basically the same as we've talked about. Muzzle in a safe direction, finger off the trigger, know your target and what's beyond it. And that's very important with a rifle, because rifles can shoot fairly long distances as compared to shotguns. Shotguns may go 50 or 75 yards. Some rifles can go a mile or more. So you need to make sure, and depending on what you're shooting and the calibers you're shooting, your projectile may go through your target and keep going. So you need to make real sure what's beyond your target. Again, don't rely on the gun safety and use the correct ammunition. Always wear eye and ear protection. This is extremely important with rifles because they create a lot of noise, and you may have fragments or splatter come back into your face. My lovely assistant. Here's a set of ear protection that you may. This is one variety. You've got the kind that'll go in your ear. This is the kind that'll go over your ears. So you'll still be able to hear with this type of protection, but it cuts off the extremely loud noise, and that's what causes hearing damage. Be sure the barrel is clear of obstructions before you shoot. In other words, the last time you were out here, that very last shot that you made, it may have been a squib load, and the projectile may be stuck in that barrel. So before you shoot it the next time, you need to take a little wooden dowel rod or a cleaning rod and run it down the barrel just to make sure it's clear of obstructions. If your gun fails to fire when the trigger's pulled, handle with care. Again, keep that muzzle pointed in a safe direction until you can figure out what the problem is and how you can clear the problem. Because even if it discharges, if that muzzle's pointed in a safe direction, then everything will be okay. You want to clean your firearms regularly. Let's say every time that you come shoot, you shoot 50 or 100 rounds, take it home, clean it, cleaning rods and patches and solvents down the barrel, wipe down the outside with a light coat of oil, keep all the mechanisms oiled up, not too heavy, but enough just to keep them so they're moving, and it also keeps corrosion off. Again, never use alcohol or drugs while you're handling a firearm. None whatsoever. Storing your firearms, just like the shotguns, we need to store them in a safe place so that they are not accessible to children or someone that does not have permission to use your firearm. I know there's sometimes in the news you'll see where a child gets a hold of a firearm and accidentally discharges it and someone is seriously injured or killed, and that is a tragedy that should never happen, because you as a responsible gun owner have a responsibility to make sure that this firearm is always safe and under your control. There's various types of locks that you can use to store these, anywhere from a lock that goes around the trigger, a lock that would go around the trigger so you could not get access to the trigger, to a lock that would come up through here and into the chamber area so that you couldn't close this and cause the firearm to discharge. Gotta be careful of that, that's my hunting rifle. Types of firearm, the first one we're going to talk about is a bolt action, which this is a bolt action. And again, we have a lot of the same parts as we did on the shotgun. We've got a butt, we've got a stock. This time we've got a grip here, which is a little bit different. We have a forearm, we have the barrel, the action, which is built into this area here. When you pull the trigger, it discharges and starts the reaction. This one has an external safety right here. And remember, on safeties, here's a good way to remember it. If it's red, you're dead. That means the firearm is ready to shoot and it can be discharged. The safety is not on. So remember, if it's red, you're dead. That means it's ready to go. So, what makes this one a bolt action? If you'll notice, this is considered a bolt. So I have a little magazine that holds 4 rounds. I put my rounds in here. I put my magazine in the bottom. And then as I push the bolt forward, it'll take one of the cartridges and put it in the chamber. And then I push the handle down and it's ready to go. All I have to do is take it off of safety, put it to red, and it's ready to shoot. So this is the bolt action. You have a bolt that moves back and forth. A semi-automatic rifle. This is an old 22 here, but it's a semi-automatic. And again, it's just like that shotgun. This one actually loads through the stock. That kind of tells you how old it is. I'll take this rod out. I'll put, I think it holds 17 rounds in this one, 15 to 17 in this little area. I'll put the rod back in and close it, and I start pulling the trigger. And every time I pull the trigger, I'm going to discharge a round out of this barrel, out of this firearm down this barrel. Now, again, it has the butt, the stock, the grip, the barrel. But if you'll notice one thing about this firearm, and it's it's a little 22. It has a rear sight right here, and it has a front sight. So when you're getting ready to shoot that, and we'll talk about it a little bit more, you want to line this front sight up with the rear sight. Remember, in the shotgun, we kind of pointed it. We didn't aim it. Or the rifle, we're going to aim it, and we'll talk about how to aim it and some of the components of it in just a few minutes. But that's a semi-automatic. As fast as you can pull the trigger, you can discharge a firearm, projectile. Lever action. Again, a lever action rifle, I would say, is kind of like the pump shotgun. You load it up. On this one, you load from the side. When you get it loaded, you close your lever, pull the trigger, discharge. You open it, and when it does, it ejects the spent cartridge. It puts another cartridge in there. You close it, you're ready to fire. So as fast as you can do this, you could fire it, but it's not the same as a semi-automatic. You have to mechanically eject and load in order to get that. One of the types of firearms that a lot of people are familiar with is the modern sporting rifle. Most people will call this an AR, and it's incorrectly known as an assault rifle. The reason it's called an AR because it was made by Armor Light. So it's an Armor Light rifle. This rifle was designed in 1955 and used in the Vietnam War. And in the Vietnam War, it was called an M16. So that's what I learned to shoot an AR on platform as an M16. But again, you're going to have a lot of the same parts as far as butt, stock, barrel. This one has a pistol grip. So instead of a stock grip like this is just like gripping a pistol. You wrap your hand around it, you keep your finger laid alongside the trigger until you're ready to fire. Now, this particular model has an adjustable stock. So you can slide it back or slide it forward, and it fits a lot of different people. It doesn't have a fixed stock. You can adjust the stock. It also has, on this one, it has a safety. This lever here, you switch it from safe to fire. So when you're not using it, it's on safe. When you're ready to fire, and you only send it to fire when you're ready to pull the trigger, okay? Keep it on safety otherwise. It has what's called a charging handle. You pull it back, you'll have a magazine in it. This is a magazine. This is what holds all your ammunition. And you insert the magazine in the magazine well, just like this. That's what holds your ammunition. There's no internal magazines. And the reason this is called a charging handle, because once you have the magazine in here, you'll take this device, you'll pull it back, it will actually load a bullet up into the chamber, and you let it go, and it is charged. It's ready to go, okay? On this one, it has a magazine release. It's this button here, and it's different on each one, but you push that, and you take your magazine out, okay? So it releases the magazine. It also has, well, it doesn't show it on there. If you'll notice, when I had the magazine in, it locked the charging back, or the chamber back. In order to let that go forward, I have to push the release. Did you hear it? You couldn't see it because it's on different sides, but it released the bolt here to go in the battery so it's ready to fire. Another thing that's different about an AR is it has a handle, a grip, and the barrel runs through it. If you'll notice on these rifles, the barrel sort of laid in the forearm and it was exposed. Well, on the AR, the barrel runs through the handguard, thank you. runs through the handguard. And you can add different attachments to it. This is called a Picatinny rail. You can add things to it. This particular one has flip-up sights. Now, if this is just like any other rifle, I want to aim it and sight it in, and I'll align my front sights with my back sights. It's basically the same thing. It's a different kind of sight, but it's the same type of stuff here. Okay. And what else? Okay, the picture shows that it has a vertical foregrip. You can mount that instead of holding the handguard. You can hold the hand grip. But again, that is not an assault rifle. That's an armor light rifle model. It's one of the most popular firearms on the market. And here, as we said earlier, AR does not stand for assault rifle. AR stands for armor light rifle, after the company who developed it. This is not an assault weapon. This particular model is a .22, and my grandson uses it for target practicing a lot. You can get different calibers and you can hunt with them, just like you can any of these other rifles. You can hunt with them. You can shoot competition with them. So they're made for different things. This is not an automatic. A full automatic, all you would have to do is pull the trigger and it would continue to fire until it was empty. You have to pull the trigger every time you want to discharge a bullet. So it's one shot per trigger pull. Some of the different rifle shooting positions, we have a bench rest, where you have a bench that you can put your rifle on. It may have a bipod or sandbags to help stabilize it. We have standing, which this young lady she's just standing up and holding her firearm. We have a kneeling position where he's down on one knee, and this particular one is using a barricade to shoot from. We have a sitting position where the gentleman's sitting down and he's propping his arms up on one leg. And then we have the prone position, which is laying on your belly flat on the ground or on some type of surface. So there's different shooting positions. And if you're wanting to learn one, then you should practice before you start using that position in competition or for hunting. Okay, some of the rifle fundamentals. We talked about shooting positions. We're going to talk about aiming, sight alignment, sight picture, trigger press, breath control, and follow through. We did the dominant eye exercise when we did the shotgun. It's the exact same thing. Sight alignment. Sight alignment is aligning your front sight with your back sight. Okay? You want them to be, if this will show up really well, if you'll notice, this is your front sight right here with the little white dot. You want it to be level with your back sights, and you want it to be equally spaced in between your back sight. That's a proper sight alignment. Now, sight picture means taking this sight alignment and putting it on the target that you're going to shoot. But if you'll notice, the human eye can only focus on one thing at one distance. So when you obtain a correct sight picture, your target will be just a little out of focus, your front sight will be in focus, and your back sights will be a little out of focus. So you want to get your sight alignment, which is your front sight and your rear sight, in the proper position, with the top of the front sight aligned with the top of the back sights and equally spaced. You don't want the front sight down here or up here or over here, because it'll shoot in the wrong direction. So once you get that aligned, then you take that and you place it on your target and focus just on that front sight. Here it shows you some of the different focus. This first one, the shooter's focused on the target, and you notice how out of focus that is. This one, the shooter's focused on the rear sight, so the front sight and the target is out of focus. And over here is the correct focus in aiming, and they're focused on the front sight, then the rear sight, and the target's just a little bit out of focus. Let's talk about scopes for a minute. Scopes are used to give you some magnification, some clarification. You don't have front sights and rear sights normally when you have a scope, but there's many types of scopes. As you can see in the pictures, there's many different types of reticles. And a reticle is what you see inside. Is it a crosshair? Is it a circle? Is it, here's a cross with different things. Here's a circle with different places. And all of these are made for different types of shooting. But basically, a scope is you look in this end and you see this end, what's in here, and you have a reticle in there that you line it up on your target. Instead of trying to line your front and rear sights up, you look in here, and whatever your reticle is, that's how you're going to line it up. And then you can adjust it left, right, up, down. Some of them have magnifications. I think this is a 3x12 scope that I can crank up the power on it and it magnifies it more, or I can crank it down and it not quite as much magnification. So all kinds of scopes out there from all kinds of price ranges. Okay, next thing we want to talk about is breath control. When you breathe, if you're holding a firearm, you actually can watch that firearm move. It's called arc of movement. So when you get ready to shoot, you want to take a breath, exhale, and then hold it for just a few seconds. Don't hold it too long, you'll pass out. So breathe, exhale, and then hold it, squeeze the trigger, and after the follow through, then you can continue to breathe. But you don't want, like I said, you don't want to hold your breath too long. Next thing we're going to talk about is trigger control. When you get ready to shoot, you want to place the fatty pad at the tip of your finger, this part right here. That's what you want to be on the trigger. You don't want the trigger back in here. You don't want it way out here. You want it in this first joint on the fatty pad of your finger. So, and as you pull the trigger, talk to yourself and say, pull, 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 or squeeze, squeeze, squeeze. This helps you make a slow, steady motion, and actually the bang from the gun should be a surprise. So if you have ever watched someone, especially shooting a handgun, and they're holding it, if you want to really get to them, you load a dummy round in their magazine, and you'll watch them, they'll anticipate it, and they'll actually push down on the gun when nothing happens. Same thing with a rifle, somebody would do that. They're anticipating the bang, so they kind of push down to try to keep the recoil from having as big of an effect, and they're off target. So you want to be a surprise. Talk to yourself, pull, pull, or squeeze, squeeze. Just talk to yourself until the bang goes off and make it a surprise. Follow through, just like we talked about on shotguns or golfing. Once you pull that trigger, you want to give it just a moment before you move or before you reset the trigger, because you can once you pull it back, you can actually let it go. If you let it go too much, your finger comes off the trigger, so you'll be slapping the trigger. So the next shot will be off. You want smooth pull, release, pull, release, just slow movements, and hold it for just a moment. Okay, let's talk about some of the cartridge malfunctions that you might encounter. The first one is a cartridge separation, case separation. This is where the projectile is actually separated or just a little bit loose from the cartridge. This happens a lot in reload situations. If you reload that cartridge too many times, then the neck of it may not fit the projectile exactly right. A dud or a misfire. This is when you pull the trigger and nothing happens. For whatever reason, it may be a bad primer, it may be bad powder where they've soaked it in vinegar, it may be all kinds of different things, but it will not fire, so it's a misfire. Now, one that's really, really dangerous is a hang fire. This is where you pull the trigger, nothing happens, but maybe a half a second later, it goes bang. So anytime that you're shooting a firearm, you pull the trigger, nothing happens, keep that muzzle pointed in a safe direction for at least 30 seconds. And then you still want to keep it pointed in a safe direction, but then you can start trying to clear the firearm and see what the malfunction is going to be. But remember, that misfire may actually be a hang fire. A squib load, this is something that is extremely dangerous. It can cause a catastrophic failure. This is where you fire the firearm, you hear the bang, but it may sound a little bit less noisy. It may be a bang instead of a bang. Or you may not see the fire come out the end of the barrel like you normally do. But what happened is, for a bad powder or for whatever reason, that projectile, once it left the casing, started down the barrel, it stopped and it got hung in the barrel. So now that gun probably has enough energy to cycle itself. If you're using a semi-automatic, it'll probably cycle itself, eject that spent cartridge, put another round in the chamber ready for you to fire. So if you fire and you've got a projectile stuck in your barrel, it's going to be a bad day. It could be a catastrophic failure. You could get hurt, seriously injured, have an eye put out, all kinds of things. Just in a recent concealed carry class that I did, we had a squib load, and thankfully the RSO was standing beside the person and noticed that it was a very low sound, and he stopped him immediately. And thankfully he did, because the projectile was stuck in the barrel. So squib loads, you've got to listen to your firearm, listen to what's happening. It may have less recoil. You're used to it being really heavy recoil, and it's a very light recoil. Don't pull the trigger again until you investigate and find out what has just happened. Mechanical malfunctions, one of them is a failure to feed. In other words, if you're doing a semi-automatic and you discharge a round, but for whatever reason you don't have a good position on your shoulder for it to recoil against, it may not extract the entire cartridge and feed the next cartridge. So there's nothing for it to actually push against. So if you're shooting a handgun, we call it limp wristing. Failure to extract, something may have happened to the extractor on your firearm and it did not grab the cartridge and pull it and eject it. So you've still got that spent cartridge in your chamber. And a stovepipe. This typically occurs in a pump action, a semi-automatic, or even a fully automatic, where you pull the trigger and the spent cartridge, instead of being ejected, it stands straight up and it's stuck in the chamber. So it's not completely ejected, but it's sticking straight up just like a stovepipe. A double feed, this is where one cartridge is already in the chamber and it's trying to feed another cartridge on top of it. So it's trying to get two cartridges in the chamber at the same time, and it will not be able to do that. It'll be jammed and you'll have to take it, you know, get that second cartridge out. And sometimes that's kind of difficult to do. And out of battery, a firearm is in battery whenever the bolt or the is fully forward. For instance, on this firearm, this would be considered out of battery because this, you see the firing mechanism, it's the bolt, it's all the way up and it's ready to fire. If this was pulled back, say, just like that, it would be out of battery and it would not be able to fire. See, it's just barely, not all the way forward. And if on a semi-automatic, you know, you can pull the charging handle back and let it go. It won't hurt them. They're tough firearms. And now it's completely in battery, so it's ready to shoot. But if it's not fully forward, it will not let you shoot. So it's called out of battery. Some of the basic rules for cleaning your firearm, of course, assemble your cleaning supplies. It's always good. You can start out by buying a kit that has everything you need in it: cleaning rods, cleaning patches, lubricants, oils. Never clean your gun with someone else in the room, and never have ammunition in the same room as where you're cleaning your firearm. You don't want to accidentally load that firearm. There's more accidents with an unloaded gun than there is with a loaded gun. People think it's unloaded, they do something really not smart, and they have a discharge and have a firearm accident. So keep your firearm in a keep your ammunition in a different room than your firearm. Again, you want to wear eye protection, because some of the solvents are very corrosive, so you don't want to splatter it in your eye. You don't want to be watching TV and watching the football game or anything like that, because you don't want to be distracted when you're cleaning your firearm. You always want to keep the muzzles pointed in a safe direction. Even though you may be in your house cleaning it, you want to make sure that muzzle is pointed in a safe direction. You're going to clean the rifle bore, the chamber and action, the stock and barrel, and then once you get it all cleaned and a light coat of oil on it, you want to store it in a safe place. Again, general safety rules: eye and ear protection must be worn at all times. Know and obey all range rules. Shoot only at authorized targets in your range. And if you think you've experienced a malfunction, keep the muzzle pointed downrange. Stop shooting immediately. If you're on a range, raise your hand for assistance. Or if you're shooting with a buddy somewhere, get your buddy to help and take care of the malfunction. Always keep the muzzle point in safe direction. Firearms should always be unloaded when not actually in use. Again, do not rely on the gun's safety. It is a mechanical device and it could fail. And always keep the finger off the trigger until you're ready to shoot. Thank you for visiting us at Foothills Public Shooting Complex here in Cleveland County. We hope you come out and shoot with us very soon.